very warm welcome to all of you. Yes, so exactly, just to reiterate really what Sonia said, today we'll be covering how AI is shaping the workplace, especially in the context of real estate. And also we'll be covering what AI actually is, looking at real world applications, bust some common myths, and also finish by looking at how we as professionals can stay ahead of the curve, because obviously none of us want to get left behind. That's really the most important thing. I am obviously delighted as the founder of PowerCore Global Training to be working obviously today in partnership with Bayfield Training. It's great to be partnering again on a succession of webinars on this topic of AI. The idea behind this particular webinar is that it will be practical, jargon-free, and also accessible. So no technical background is needed, because I think sometimes people get a bit nervous when they hear that word or that term artificial intelligence. They think, oh my goodness, I need to be some sort of a computer coder or something like this, and that's not the case at all. So let's have a look then. Let's crack on with what is artificial intelligence. Um, when we look at what AI is, it refers to machines or systems performing tasks that normally require human intelligence, things like recognizing patterns, making predictions, or even writing emails. And in fact, for me, that's one of the most fascinating things about our AI, is that it is predictive. You will ask it a question, you will prompt it in a certain way, and it almost reads your mind. It gives you answers to questions you haven't even asked it, because it sort of knows what the pattern of your thinking is. And certainly when I first came across that, I was quite stunned by that. I thought, my goodness, this feels like ChatGPT is some sort of mind reader here, but that's literally what it is. It predicts things. And I do find that rather fascinating. In real estate, of course, AI is already very much in play, helping to summarize lease documents, analyzing market trends, or flagging up investment opportunities. It's not about robots, it's about smart software helping us to work smarter. That's really the point. So let's have a look then at some of the core capabilities. So what exactly can AI do then? Let's break it down. So first, it learns from data. The more examples it sees, the better it gets. Second, it spots patterns, as I said before, for example, in pricing or tenant behaviors. Third, it understands or generates language. So tools like ChatGPT can summarize reports or help write listing descriptions. Then it supports decision making as well, like forecasting yields. And finally, it can interpret visuals or speech, for instance, analyzing property photos or transcribing meetings. One of the things I find it's quite useful for is that you can upload, let's say, a report in PDF format, and you can ask it, prompt it to give you the summary of that report in terms of bullet points, if you haven't got a lot of time, and it will literally pull out the key points from the data that you need to be looking at. So it's a massively important time-saving capabilities there. But just to reiterate here, so learning from data, AI analyzes the large data sets to identify patterns and improve over time. So in other words, it can spot recurring risks in lease documents would be one example. It can, as I've alluded to before, recognize patterns and trends. So it detects insights in data too complex or subtle for humans. In other words, tracking high yield microlocations. It can understand and generate language, NLP. So it reads, writes, summarizes, and converses in human language. So it can summarize reports, draft emails, and answer FAQs. But I think when we look at drafting emails, I know some of you will think, well, gosh, I wouldn't want to send an email out that might sound a bit mechanical or robotic, but that, you see, is the thing. You can prompt AI to use a tone that is consistent with you and your organization. So it sounds more human and it corresponds to your values and your style of communication. That's the point. And then you can make data-driven decisions. So it applies rules and predictive models to suggest or automate actions. In other words, for example, recommending investment opportunities based on forecasts. And then it interprets images and audio, so it identifies objects, scenes, and speech in multimedia, for instance, analyzing property photos or transcribing calls. Lovely. So let's have a look then at the three key types of AI. So in the context specifically of real estate, AI is being used in several ways. Firstly, helping to summarize lease documents. Secondly, to write market reports. And thirdly, predicting which properties might rise in value. So now there's three main categories here that you can see at the bottom here: narrow AI, generative AI, and predictive AI. So narrow AI is task specific, like a chatbot or a spam filter. So examples there would include things like chatbots, spam filters, lease extraction, abstraction. And then there's generative AI, and that is AI that creates new content. So that would be text, images, even video. Examples would include things like ChatGPT, but also Midjourney and Sora. I don't know if anyone has ever used Midjourney, but it's really fascinating if you want to create images or even sort of animated videos. It does an astonishing job. And then predictive AI uses patterns to forecast outcomes, great for pricing or investment modeling. And so examples would be price trend models or tenant churn alerts. Now, of course, most smart organizations are using a combination of all of these elements today. So let's have a look then at the core pillars of AI. Well, let's sort of, as it were, peek under the hood for a second and see how does AI actually work, pick it apart, as it were. So firstly, data is the fuel. The more relevant, clean data, the more we feed it, the better it is. There is a saying, isn't there, that data is dirty. I don't know if any of you have heard of that expression, data is dirty. And to some extent, as great as AI is, it is at the mercy of the data that is input into it. So if the data is wrong, dirty, biased, prejudiced, then unfortunately AI will reflect that. Okay, it doesn't have the cognitive abilities to be able to really question things and hypotheses. That's very much still a human preserve. We'll come on to that later. But examples here in terms of the fuel would be things like lease documents, sales history, tenant behavior, that sort of thing. And then, of course, we come on to the algorithms, and these are like the engine. They do the number crunching and the logic. So examples here would be pricing predictions or sentiment analysis. And then, of course, you have the learning models the improvement mechanism. So learning models are how it improves. It learns by examples, by spotting patterns, or by trial and error. So as you can see here, there are three different types of learning models that it uses. So one is supervised learning, labeled data, e.g. identifying rental prices. The other one is unsupervised learning, finding hidden patterns, in other words, through market segmentation. And then it does reinforcement learning, learning by trial and error, e.g. dynamic pricing and that sort of thing. So that's how tools like AI-based valuation models or tenant behavior predictors are trained using those models. Let's have a look at the benefits of AI in business, how AI is changing the workplace. So we're going to talk about how AI is, as it were, showing up in the workplace. So one of the things it's doing is it's automating repetitive tasks, things like generating reports, or updating CRM records. It's big on that. It helps with decision making as well. So by surfacing insights we may not be able to spot ourselves. So that's one big area. It's also changing how we communicate through chatbots, transcriptions, automated email responses, that sort of thing, which obviously frees up time to us to focus on more strategic, human-facing tasks. So let's have a look at some of the benefits, because I know some people quite understandably feel a little bit concerned about AI. They worry that it's going to take away jobs, perhaps their job. They worry about security matters. We'll come on to all of these concerns later. But let's, for now, focus on the real benefits, of which there are some substantial benefits here. So what do we gain from it? Well, big efficiency gains, doing more in less time, working smarter decisions with the data to back them up, so long as the data is good. Better, faster communication internally and with clients. Now we don't have to spend time worrying and agonizing over how should we perhaps word this maybe slightly complicated email to a colleague or to a client or whatever. AI, so long as we prompt it in the right way and let it know our conundrum, we'll be able to word it for us in the best way so we can get it off as fast as possible. Improved accuracy and consistency, especially in repetitive work. And most importantly of all, it amplifies human potential. So it lets us focus on thinking, connecting, and leading. So it's not about removing people, but I would argue it's about supercharging people and supercharging leaders. I mean, one of the things I also do as well as doing negotiation training is I train people a lot in leadership skills, actually. And one of the big conundrums there is a lot of leaders find they don't have a lot of time to do the strategic stuff, that they struggle finding the space to do that. AI can help to open up that space for leaders to be more strategic and to lead in a more visionary way, which of course is an enormous benefit. Let's have a look then at challenges and risks of AI in the workplace. There are a fair number. Let's just go through them. It's not, of course, smooth sailing. There's no such thing as a free lunch, as the expression goes. So there are real risks to consider. So let's talk about those risks then. One is privacy and data, major concerns, especially in the real estate sector, especially with tenant data or financial records. There could be concerns there. Over reliance is another. We still need human oversight. I think there is a danger that sometimes people might use it a bit too much as a sort of a crutch, and we have to be careful of that. Many organizations as well struggle to integrate AI smoothly into their systems. It could, that could lead to underutilized tools and wasted investment. It can be hard if you have an organization which already has a spaghetti junction of legacy systems as well. How do you then piece AI into that very confusing puzzle, I mean? And so that can be rather difficult. And then, of course, there are job fears, especially among admin or junior staff. That's why communication and change management are essential. I want to talk to you about change management because it's a subject that is close to my heart. I do feel that with any issue regarding change, and AI is at the forefront of the conversation about change within our organizations right now, um, we need to be careful about how we communicate change. We need to make sure that there's a clear communication policy around how it's used, but also how it will be adopted and should be adopted, and also why the company is adopting it as well. Because I think sometimes that communication piece is left forgotten. So if it can be communicated to staff that we're using it not because we want to replace you, but rather we want to enhance what you're doing, and also to put staff's minds at rest about the security issues around it as well. To give you one example, I was working with a wealth manager last week who were telling me that they don't use ChatGPT 4 because they feel that it's not necessarily secure enough. They are, however, using another platform called Copilot, which is apparently considerably safer and also largely free. So that might be something you might want to consider if you feel that ChatGPT might just be a little bit, a bit not secure enough. Okay. So I do think if you're going to seriously embark upon using AI in the workplace, have a communication strategy and policy around that. Appoint people that can own the change, if you will, people that are movers and shakers in AI who understand it and see the benefits and communicate that to staff so that it will put your staff's feelings at rest if, for instance, they might feel concerned about their roles. Um, yeah, let's carry on with obviously challenges in the workplace as well. So what we've got here, yeah, it can also amplify biases. I think this is a big one. Any biases that may be present in the data will get mirrored, unfortunately. So in other words, if the data reflects historic inequalities, the AI will learn from that too. It will reflect any historic bias that is fed into it, unfortunately. So we need to be aware of that. I think another challenge is many professionals still lack basic AI literacy, making it hard to assess tools or use them effectively. Not everyone feels confident using these tools yet. So having some kind of training around it will be very useful. But also tools like ChatGPT or indeed Copilot are quite intuitive in the way that one might use them. It's almost like having a I sometimes feel like I'm talking to my therapist. I know that may sound bizarre, but it speaks to you in a surprisingly human way. I'm not saying it is human, of course it isn't, but it's quite extraordinary. And I mean, even around, I mean, I probably shouldn't say this, but even around work-life balance issues. If you wanted to ask it a personal question about how to balance your time, or if you have a conundrum in a personal relationship, it can give surprisingly good advice actually about, setting boundaries and all of this sort of thing. So it is, I think the point that I'm trying to say is not being afraid of it, but rather treating it with caution as a sort of confidant to a degree. Um, I think finally, and this is a big one, I think for the real estate sector especially, is this changing legal and regulatory environment. It's shifting all of the time, especially around things like transparency and accountability. So who's accountable for AI decisions? What needs to be disclosed to clients? These are evolving issues. But this comes back to the point I made just now about having a plan. If you're going to use AI within your organizations, we need to think about these compliance issues. How is that going to be managed? Maybe, we will or won't use AI for certain areas that are a bit more sensitive than others and so on. How will we train staff? How we will communicate the benefits of AI to staff? Brilliant. So let's then come on to demystifying common AI myths. I think the biggest one right now, and I do want to kind of bust a few of these myths right now for you, is AI will replace all jobs. And I'm hearing a lot of that, especially up and down the City of London. There's particularly younger people, entry level people, understandably feel threatened in a sort of a jobs marketplace where some people are sending off hundreds of CVs, just to get one position. It seems to be much more competitive than it was in my day. And there's a feeling that AI may, in fact, restrict the opportunities even further. But that is a myth, in my opinion. It is a myth. It's not that AI will replace all jobs. No, it will replace tasks. And that's the point. Relationship-based work is still deeply human. People buy from other human beings. People buy from people. And if we think not just of our clients as customers, but our staff as internal customers as well, that human element of needing to win people over with empathy and to create that rapport, that will never die, in my opinion. Now, the other myth is that you have to be technical, that AI is restrictive and that it's only for computer nerds and that sort of thing. And it's not true at all, because most tools are built for everyday users. I mean, I wouldn't class myself as being especially technically savvy. I'm reasonably technically savvy. I wouldn't call myself a computer programmer. For instance, I don't know how to do Python or anything like that, but I can very easily use it. So anyone with a basic level, not even a basic level of literacy, can use it. I mean, and it's pretty intuitive, I think, and certainly with the right training, you'll pick it up in minutes. AI understands like a human. This is another myth. Actually, it's just great at spotting patterns, not meaning. The thing that I find probably one of the most disturbing things, but disturbing in a good way about AI, is that it simulates empathy. I mean, it's not actually feeling anything, but it makes you feel that it is feeling something. And I find that a bit spooky, to be honest. But it's very good at simulating feelings. So perhaps we have to be careful about that. I don't know. Um, and another myth is more data equals smarter AI. But as I said earlier, and as someone who worked in the information space, the business information space for many, many years for a company that's now part of Dun and Bradstreet, I know how dirty data is. Data is dirty. It's a dirty, dirty area, unfortunately. And therefore, the quality of the data matters enormously to AI. We need to be pumping in good data. If we're not, then unfortunately, what we're going to get churned back out is not going to be a happy form of recycling. Let's put it that way. Um, and then I think the other thing is that, AI is neutral. It is not. It is not neutral at all. It reflects whatever bias is in the data. Absolutely. It will reflect human bias. So if there are historical prejudices or inequalities in relation to property or whatever, all of that nonsense will come spewed out again into the findings. That's really the point. So I think these myths are common, but they're holding people back from exploring what's possible. And I've learned probably the older that I've got, to be honest with you, that you've got to be in it to win it. You can either be behind the curve or ahead of the curve. And none of us should be in the position here of being successful professionals who are leaving ourselves open to getting left behind. There is no need to see AI as a threat. I really believe that. Okay, so let's have a look then. Yeah, just I think having a look at some other sort of common myths here, worth just quickly going through them. But there is, coming back to that thing about real anxiety around job loss. But as I've said before, in property, client trust, local knowledge, and negotiation, these are all human skills. AI can handle research, not relationships. It cannot do that. And I think also many people think AI tools require programming, but in fact, tools like ChatGPT or Excel Copilot are designed to be as intuitive as a smartphone app. They really are. It's important to explain that AI doesn't understand context the way humans do. It mimics understanding by recognizing patterns, and that's why human review is always essential. So never just, and I'm not suggesting anyone here would, but one mustn't lazily, as it were, rely on the message that comes out. Always be careful to check everything that you're receiving. Um, you may hear we just need more data, but as I've said before, poor data equals poor AI. Inaccurate valuations or missing property details can lead to serious problems. And finally, just because AI isn't human doesn't mean it's neutral. Historical bias in real estate, whether in pricing, lending, or tenancy, can be reflected in AI unless we're very careful. Great. So let's have a look at the human advantage. Soft skills matter more than ever. So this is where I sort of shout out in support of the human race. For all of you that fear that perhaps we're living in some horrible dystopian world where AI is about to replace us all. I know some people are kind of feeling a bit like that right now. Some of my wealth managers feel a bit that way. In fact, there's very good news here. Our human skills matter more than ever in this world. What skills? Well, things like curiosity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, understanding our own emotions and the impact on others, communication, ethics. That there's a whole piece around ethics and AI, and also adaptability. All of these things AI cannot replace. And they're exactly what give us the edge, why humans continue to matter, although we may not feel like we matter at times. And real estate, this is especially true. People trust people, they buy from people. Let AI do the legwork so that we can do the real work. And what is the real work? That's building trust. Trust, as we know, is the glue of human relationships. No bot or computer program can ever do that. Closing deals, making sound judgment. Show me one AI platform that ever closed a deal. No, it doesn't happen. We do that. The human piece does that. So just going through these then. Curiosity, embrace our AI as a learning journey, not a threat. My feeling and the advice that I would give to anyone who hasn't yet gone on there, let's say whether it's Copilot, probably the safer option, or ChatGPT 4, is just get on there. It's free to use. You're not going to have to part with credit card details. You get all of this stuff for free. It's quite amazing. So just go on. Of course, there are more protected paid versions of various platforms. That's another matter. But I'm saying if you just want to give yourself a basic orientation, start off with one of the free platforms. Critical thinking, assess AI outputs with a questioning mindset. Many of you for those of you perhaps that have a learning and development bent will know that 2 or 3 years ago, when LinkedIn did its list of top skills that are required in the marketplace, in the marketplace, in the business world, critical thinking skills came out as number one, actually. And we're certainly, my organization is rushed off its feet at the moment with critical thinking skills training being delivered to our clients. So that's one skill that we need that can't be replaced. Emotional intelligence, connect, empathize, and building trust with clients. We need that. No platform can ever read our emotions for us. We can know our emotions and know the tone of our voice and the impact on others. Communication skills, translate insights into clear human language. Ultimately, we need to be prompting these platforms, whether it's ChatGPT or Copilot. We need to be letting them know what tone do we want. Prompting is really an important feature. It's almost like training, it's probably a bad analogy, but training a parrot to speak in a way. You've got to sort of the platform to be able to kind of understand what it is you're looking for. Judgment and ethics, make responsible decisions. AI can't. Yeah, AI doesn't really understand ethics, at least not the way we do, and adaptability, navigate change and integrate new tools fluidly. So I would say then that in terms of the human advantage, AI may be good at spotting data patterns, but it doesn't build relationships, negotiate terms, or understand human motivations. In real estate, I think we would all agree being able to read people, responding with empathy, managing expectations is still what builds loyalty. Tools like ChatGPT can draft an email, but only you can judge tone, timing, and the broader context. And obviously being curious about AI, asking how could this help me, is a key differentiator. Those who lean in will gain the most. So I want you, and I hope that, I'm sure Sonia will echo this, that I really hope that you will feel a spark of desire, if you haven't already, to dip your toe in the water of trying and testing AI just on a very minimal basis. And I think you'll be very surprised with what you find. And surprised, I would say, in a good way. Yeah, so AI can suggest strategies, but the final call needs human ethics, judgment, and responsibility, as we know. So I think for me, probably one of the most important things here is cultivating a growth mindset in an AI world. So how do we get comfortable with all of this change? I think, as I've said before, it starts with curiosity, being open to trying new things out. Of course, those of us that know our history, know that when the Industrial Revolution started in Britain, a group of individuals who were factory workers, I think, destroyed the machines. They were called the Luddites because they were terrified about using this new machinery, which they thought was somehow ungodly and would do away with them. So we just have to be very, very careful to sort of embrace this change. And I think to get curious about it's really important. So I think get comfortable with being a beginner. Everyone is learning this stuff right now. Don't feel that you're behind. I don't want you to beat yourself up either and go, oh my goodness, I should have known all of this stuff. Why aren't I much further ahead? No one is very far ahead, I can promise you. But we're all learning together. That's the way that I would view it. But the point is, if you don't take the first step, you'll never know. You'll never get on the path. And I'm a great fan of the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So what I'm hoping you might feel you might want to do after this webinar, if you haven't already, is to take that first step. So try to see AI as an opportunity, not a threat. Learn by doing. Do try ChatGPT, experiment with prompts, explore tools like Copilot, which, as I've said, is probably a bit more secure, and try to encourage team-based learning. People pick things up faster when they explore together. So I know of one of my clients. He works in a major college in London. And what he's doing actually now with his business pupils, I think it's really lovely, is that some platforms of AI actually speak. So they have a voice, so you can ask them questions and they will respond as if you were having a live conversation. And he's doing that with, his students are bringing him problematic questions and they're sort of debating with AI at the moment, which I find is really rather fascinating. But I'm quite a fan of this quote here by Eric Brynjolfsson of Stanford, who says, AI won't replace people, but people who can't work with AI who can work with AI will replace those who can't. So AI won't replace people, but people who can work with AI will replace those who can't. So this is all about getting left behind, isn't it? We don't want to be left behind. That's really the point. Great. So I don't know if this topic feels relevant to your business. Let's take it further. We do offer a 2-hour interactive session for organizations that want to explore AI more deeply. It covers areas like tools, risks, soft skills. There's lots of practical exercises, and we can build a sort of an action plan for adoption as well. It's fully customizable, tech friendly, and works for teams across departments. And obviously, if that is something that you'd like to explore for your company, let's have a chat after the session. Do get in touch with Sonia. I'm sure that she would love to hear from you, and we can certainly look at doing that for you. It is available online or on site. And I would reiterate that no kind of tech expertise is needed whatsoever.